You're not going to believe what President Joe Biden said in his State of the Union address, as many critics called him out for prime gaslighting. Now, there were a lot of moments from this address that we're going to try and talk about because it could show you how the next presidency could look like. Although we can't just ignore that former President Donald Trump and President Biden are now running closer to each other, especially when it comes to the polls. Both presidential hopefuls are now exchanging criticism of the other, something that voters already expected to begin with. But there was this one moment here where a grieving father was arrested for apparently disrupting the president's speech. The man that they arrested was 51-year-old Stephen Nikoui. So who is Mr. Nikoui, right? And why did he disrupt the president's speech? Well, President Joe Biden was talking about how America is safer today compared to when he took office. Now, at this point, Mr. Nikoui has had enough and repeatedly shouted 13 Marines. You see, he is the father of Lance Corporal Kareem Nikoui, one of the 13 U.S. service members who were killed in a blast in Kabul, Afghanistan. This came at the heels of President Joe Biden's catastrophic withdrawal of Afghanistan. And this is just part of the gaslighting that many who watched the State of the Union address were referring to. And if Americans are so safe, then why are our troops being killed overseas? Now, before we really get into this thing here, guys, all I ask is that you take 1 second, drop a quick like for the video. I totally appreciate you guys. And I want to thank you so much for sharing this video. It totally helps getting the message out, as more people need to hear about this.
More than an hour into President Joe Biden's State of the Union address,
murder rates went up 30%.
Steve Nikoui interrupted.
The biggest increase in history.
Yelling, "Remember Abby Gate," U.S. Marines Kareem Nikoui, before being escorted out of the building. Abby Gate is the entrance to the airport in Afghanistan where a suicide bomber killed 13 U.S. service members 3 years ago, including Nikoui's son. A majority of the fallen heroes were assigned to Camp Pendleton.
It took a lot of courage for him to stand up in front of a big forum like that. And I'm glad that Joe Biden got to see his face and hear his son's name.
Cheryl Rex is the mother of 20-year-old Lance Corporal Dylan Marola, who was also killed in the bombing. Rex knows the Nikoui family and says she's proud of Steve for speaking up. She believes the White House has not properly honored or acknowledged their children's deaths.
We've been fighting for accountability and answers for 2.5 years, and we've gotten nothing as parents.
The men and women of the military stand ready.
Last August, Congressman Darrell Issa invited Rex, Nikoui, and the 11 other Gold Star families to speak at a public forum in Escondido. Family members spoke about their loss and questioned how the U.S. government handled its withdrawal from Afghanistan.
We left thousands of allies behind.
ABC News has reported that ISIS-K claimed responsibility for the attack and that the bomber behind it was killed last year.
So Nikoui was invited to this event by Florida Representative Brian Mast to serve as a reminder to the president about the damage that he has inflicted to national security and to American families. So Mast said that he was proud to have the father there, and that at the last 3 State of the Union speeches, President Biden has chosen not to acknowledge any of the names of those 13 U.S. service members. It's also worth noting that the House Speaker looked like he was beside himself when President Joe Biden was talking about the safety of the United States and its people. He's probably thinking about the borders as Biden is saying this. So Nikoui was arrested and apparently handcuffed due to him shouting at the president, and was later charged with crowding, obstructing, and incommodating. I don't even know what incommodating is. Anyway, Capitol Police has confirmed that any disruption to Congress in the constitutional buildings is considered illegal. Critics of the Biden administration said that this was completely unfair, as this was a grieving parent who was merely calling out the president for his lies. There was another instance here that surprised everyone, even President Biden himself, and that's when he saw Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. So Greene has been very outspoken about her support for Trump and very critical of every little mistake that President Joe Biden has shown. Greene showed up in the State of the Union address dressed in white and red with a MAGA cap. Now, what was so eye-catching was her shirt. It read, "Say her name, Laken Riley." Laken Riley is the name of a nursing student from Georgia who was killed by an illegal immigrant from Venezuela. While the suspect has been arrested and charged with murder, many still criticize President Joe Biden as they believe that it was his open border policies that led to this death. And as the president made his way to the crowd, you could see Greene mouth mouthing "say your name" to the president. And this led to a very awkward situation for the Democrats. The president did acknowledge Riley, but instead of saying Laken Riley, President Biden fumbled and said Lincoln Riley instead. Great job, Joe. He then went on to say that she was killed by an illegal. Now, you guys are aware that this term is off limits for Democrats, right? In fact, Nancy Pelosi went on mainstream media to say that Biden should not have said this term. She said that the proper term for this person was undocumented, which led critics to ask, does it really matter what he's called? Because again, he killed a US citizen on American soil. Others say that the term is actually correct. They are immigrants who cross the borders illegally, hence the term illegal immigrants. But Pelosi seems to have forgotten that an American life was taken by the very same person. Others argued if Pelosi would be offended if the suspect was called a murderer. That is, if he is found guilty, of course. And it seems as if Biden kind of gave in to Greene's pressure and he went off script, something that Democrats were not thrilled about, because Biden said that he understood how these parents felt about losing their child. He said that he's experienced the same thing. Some analysts believe that this is somehow yet another sign of Biden's narcissism and how he makes most things about himself. Now, related to this tragic death, the House of Representatives recently passed the Laken Riley Act. This was approved by all GOP members in attendance and was also supported by 37 Democrats. 170 other Democrats voted no, with Representative Jerry Nadler saying that Republicans are merely using Riley's death for a partisan stunt. He added that the GOP were merely throwing together legislation to target immigrants in an election year. House Speaker Mike Johnson said in a statement that Laken Riley would probably still be alive if the Biden administration had just done its job. Now, we have to note that one of the duties of the President of the United States is to make sure that the citizens of this nation stay safe, be it from domestic or even foreign threats. The goal of this bill is to force federal authorities to detain illegal immigrants who have been accused of theft. It would also allow states to sue the federal government if they can demonstrate harm was caused by immigrants who enter the country illegally. It's also expected that this bill would ultimately be shot down by Democrats in the Senate. However, this message has been sent loud and clear, and more Americans are now becoming fully aware of the dangers that this Biden administration has led into the country. This address was greatly watched by former President Donald Trump as he went on Truth Social to comment on it. So Trump wrote that he found the State of the Union address to be the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made. That sounded pretty bad. He also called it an embarrassment to the United States. Trump pretty much did a live play-by-play fact check of President Biden throughout his entire time. The former president alleged that Biden doesn't want to fix the borders and that we're going to see crime levels reach an all-time high. President Biden, on the other hand, referenced Trump multiple times, but chose not to say his name. So Biden referred to Trump as his predecessor and called him out 13 times during his speech. Supporters of the president, though, pointed out that even with a few mistakes here and there, President Joe Biden showed sharpness despite his advanced age. Some also praised him for the criticism of Trump and how the former president has seemingly bowed down to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump again went on social media to again answer back that Putin only invaded Ukraine because they don't respect President Biden, adding that Putin didn't even consider this as an option when he was in the White House. But what do you guys think about all this? Were you happy about this address? And as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to do my best to keep you guys informed on everything that's going on around us. But before I go, I want to thank you guys for liking the video. Thank you for sharing this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.